Hey everyone, Josh here with Fresh Start Customs, and today I'm going to be showing you guys how to quickly set up your AtomStack Hurricane, tips and tricks to help set it up. We're going to be talking about that here first in just a second. We're also going to be talking about the software for AtomStack Studio, how to use these little cards for camera calibration, or if you mess up like I did, how you can use a regular piece of paper. We're going to probably use a piece of paper since I don't have any more cards. And then I'm going to show you guys how to calibrate the camera for Lightburn as well. So we got a lot to cover. I decided to do both softwares because I feel like Lightburn is kind of a necessity right now until AtomStack can do some updates to their software. We'll dive into that here in just a moment. But with all that said, let me go ahead and get kind of a top-down overview shot of this unit here so I can show you guys some tips and tricks for setting this unit up before we get into the software here. So let me go ahead and adjust the camera. We'll get a top-down view, and then I'll show you those tips and tricks here. All right, you guys, so now that we have a top-down view here, you're gonna lift your lid after you have your machine on. The machine is pretty loud when you first turn it on, so keep that in mind. The first thing that I want you to do when you unbox your machine is test all 4 triggers here. What I mean by that is there's a little metal trigger right here. If you touch it, you'll hear it go beep beep. And what that does is that is a hit warning. That means that trigger is working. There's one all the way in the back. So if you push this back, it'll trigger and you can hear it trigger. If you push this to the left, it'll trigger. Make sure you hear that beep. And then there's one all the way up front here. And then you'll hit that trigger as well, like that. And as you can see, all 4 of mine are working. The reason why I say this is if you actually move your laser head forward here and move this forward a little bit so you can see it, that little white wire right there was bent on mine and it was touching the metal on the laser and it was grounding it out so that trigger wasn't working. I had to bend that back, so just keep that in mind. Make sure all 4 triggers are working and then your laser is going to work really well. After that, you want to go ahead and put in a piece of paper. I'm going to use the same calibration paper that I did because this is all I have with me right now. You'll set it in there like this, right about center here, and then you'll move your actual laser head over your paper, and then you'll click autofocus. So I'm going to move the camera here. As you can see, way over here on the right side of the screen, there's an autofocus button. You'll click on that. You'll see the laser head go up and down here in just a second. It's going to touch that paper. It's going to adjust the autofocus, and we are now ready to print. What you'll have to do in the software, though, is click Trace. This whole unit is going to move around in a square function and trace out where it's going to engrave. And then you'll hit Engrave, and it'll engrave on this piece of software, or this piece of paper here. So we're going to jump over to the software so I can show you how to get to the camera calibration and start the trace feature and the engraving. I think you get the idea that it just engraves back and forth and does the scores. After that, you're gonna lift the lid and then take a picture of this, and I'll show you guys a tip on getting better lighting on that, where you hold a flashlight to the back of the unit with the lights off in your shop. This is too much light for it to register. And then you'll just hold that camera and kind of slowly tilt it backwards to get enough lighting in there that's even. And then you'll be able to get a good calibration here. So I'll show you what I mean here in just a second. Let's jump over to the software and we'll get this done. All right, you guys. So as you can see, we are now in the AtomStack Studio software. I'm going to assume that you guys can download this on your own. It's as simple as going to their website, double-clicking, and then click Install. Once you have the software downloaded, it will automatically find your AtomStack Hurricane. At least it did for me. I didn't have to do anything else but plug it in by USB. Now, this is their actual software. What you want to do first is do a camera calibration. So you're going to come over to the right, click on Camera here, and then you're going to click the drop down and select G0. As you can see, this shows you a live preview of what's going on in the machine, and it shows you that piece of paper that I put in there that already has my camera calibration in it, but this is going to be blank for you right now. You'll then go ahead and hit Calibrate Alignment. It's going to give you the instructions like this. If you're going to be using the cardboard squares instead of a piece of paper like I am, the cardboard squares, you'll change this to 20, and then you'll click frame. It'll frame out a square on your laser where it'll move around that piece of paper in a square framed area. And once you go ahead and frame that out, you can go ahead and hit start, but you have to close the lid first. So go ahead and close the lid, hit start, and then it'll engrave on these cardboard squares. Now, if you're going to be using a regular sheet of paper like I am, you're going to want to change this power and the power of the line and the fill down to 12. Those are the settings that worked for me, is 12 on both of these with these speeds. But you can change that if it's too much and it's cutting through your objects. You may want to reduce the line even more, and possibly the fill too if it's going all the way through the paper, because each laser may have some power differences, so just keep that in mind based on your focus there. So as of right now, everything should be in focus with that autofocus button I showed you, and we should be able to click frame. It'll frame out a square, put your piece of paper within that square and hit frame again, make sure it lands all the way on that paper, and then hit start. After you hit start, it's going to engrave all of this out, and then it's going to look like that sheet of paper right here after it's done engraving. And then it's going to ask you to take a picture of it. It'll say capture right below this little camera alignment button here. So you'll click capture, but as you can see, I've got way too much light in here. It's not going to read it like this. So what you want to do is turn off all the lights in your shop and then hit capture. If it still can't capture it, do that camera or do that flashlight trick that I showed you a second ago, where you put a flashlight in there and slowly tilt it and get just enough lighting that it can read it properly, and hit capture again. You should get a score below 3 in order for it to be acceptable. I think I had a 1.6, but if you can get below 1, that's the best thing that you can get there. So now that you have the camera aligned, we can actually use the software. So I'm going to do a real quick basic rundown of the software. So with the software itself, now that you have the camera aligned, you can click the word camera, and what that's going to do is re-home your laser in the home position. So it ain't going to really move anywhere because it's already in the home position. But after it re-moves to that home position with those little triggers I had you touch earlier, it will refresh the image on the screen like this. So just think of this camera button up here as a refresh button, and this camera as your live button off to the right. So now we can go ahead and set whatever we want in here. So let's say we want a rectangle around this center piece right here. We'll just go like that. And then you can choose where you want the actual laser head to start. So in the top right corner, you'll see absolute coordinates. Those work really well with the camera alignment here. So if you want to go off of the camera, choose absolute coordinates. If you want to go off of the top right corner where home is, choose current position, and it'll start from the current position at the top of the screen and then engrave. So if I put this here, it should in theory still land about here, but I prefer the absolute coordinates so I know exactly where it's going to land. Or you can do user origin, where you can actually set a point. So let's say I want to start the engraving right here every single time. If I move my laser head down here, click user origin, and then save that origin, you can actually save that origin point and then start that engraving from this exact point every single time. But like I said, I prefer absolute coordinates, so it's based off the way that the camera looks here. Now with that said, as you can see, we got our line set up here. It's set for score right now, which is line mode. You can actually click this drop down, choose fill, or you can choose cut. The only thing I don't like about this is when you choose fill, it doesn't actually fill this in to show you the shading, but it does work. So just keep that in mind. You have to pay attention to what you're doing based on these layers here. This is also your power and speed adjustment, or you can click this manual parameters button and select a material that you're engraving. So let's say you're doing 5mm wood. You'll select that. We'll be using these settings here in just a second on a test sheet here that I'm going to show you. So I'm going to leave that on that here, and we're going to change it to cut, and we'll select that one more time. What I'm going to do is actually delete this, and then I'm going to import a file. Now I'm going to go ahead and quickly show you guys how to import your own file. It does have to be a DXF file, so keep that in mind. It won't work with SVG. It'll only work with DXF. If you want SVG, you will need Lightburn, which I'm going to show you here in just a second. So we're going to go ahead and click on File and then choose Import. We're going to select your file right here, which is a DXF. We're going to open that up. And as you can see, it looks like this right here. So it looks like it imported correctly. So what I'm going to do is swap out this piece of paper, put in a red sheet of wood that I have here, and then we're going to hit camera to refresh that. And I'll do all of that off screen here. But what you want to do is change the actual settings here. And if you want, you can change the actual color of these lines too, to make it easier or harder to see, whatever's easiest for you. I think red was easier. I'm going to go back to red. And then once you have this selected, you can select your settings. I'm going to go to a cut, and then we're going to change this to this setting right here, which worked for me last time. And I'll show you guys cutting this out in just a second. But to close up the software for AtomStack Studio, all of these are basic softwares that are with most lasers, so you have the option to add text here. You have an option to add an image like a JPEG, PNG, those type of files that are bitmaps. Those will work with it. You have the option to add like rectangles, circles, polygon, lines. And then under stuff, you have 3D engravings. They have all these 3D engravings that you can engrave on here. They also have like shapes and different shapes of different like types of things like animals and plants. So you do have a lot of built-in stuff that you can get right off the bat. And then they also have a ruler if you want to measure out the actual engraving area there with a ruler. But all of that said, I'm going to go ahead and put in a new sheet. I'm going to leave it on absolute coordinates. You'll hit frame, make sure it lands on that piece of wood, which I'm sure you'll know how to do that. And then you'll just hit the start button when you're ready. So pretend I put in the wood, and then we're going to hit start, and I'm going to show you this engraving here, or this actual cut here. Alright you guys, so now that we've done AtomStack Studio software, we're going to show you guys how to install Lightburn, as this is a little bit more tricky and you do have to follow the user manual pretty well to set this up. So I'm going to show you some tips and tricks and things that I ran into. One specific thing in specific was kind of hard. Now with that said, you're going to get a USB flash drive from AtomStack. You're going to open up that USB flash drive folder. It's going to look something like this. You'll double click on that and there'll be two different folders. What you're going to do first is open your software and user manual, double click on that, and you'll be presented with this right here. What you'll want to do is you'll want to install Lightburn that comes with this software, and don't upgrade it afterwards, as it works best with this software right now. And then hopefully in the future, it'll work a little bit better with that latest version. Right now, I'm just sticking with the version that it came with to make sure that it works the best. With that said, if you have a Mac computer, you'll install this one here. If you have a Windows computer, you'll install this one up here. And then you'll be good to go. Now, with that said, you can open up the Lightburn instruction guide right here. You'll double click on that, and that'll open. And as you can see, we have all of our steps here, and you're going to follow this guide. The first thing that you're going to want to do is download the Laser GRBL software. It'll look like this right here from that flash drive. So what that is this program right here, Laser GRBL. You'll double click on that and choose install. And then after you install it, you'll have this program here, and you'll have to click on Tools and choose Install this driver. If you don't have the driver available right away, you can download that driver from this link right here. So just download and extract that driver, and then choose Tools and Install, and you can select that driver and it'll automatically install for you. If this doesn't work for you, you can just double click on the driver from your folder after you install it to your folder as well, and that will automatically install it if you have this program open. So just make sure you open Laser GRBL, double click on that driver, click Next, click Install, click Next, and then you'll be good to go, and that will be installed here for you. Next up, it's going to tell you that there is a trial to download. You can use it for the trial period if you want to, but I recommend just paying for it, as Lightburn, in my opinion, is needed for this device in order to use SVG files. With that said, once you have Lightburn open, let me go ahead and open that really quick. Once you have Lightburn open, you're going to have to add your device. So if you're presented with this window right away, make sure you don't download the latest version. Just stay off of that. But if you're presented with this window, if you already have a machine, you can click on Devices to add a device. Or you'll get a giant pop-up that'll say Add a device for the first time. So what you'll do is you'll click on Devices. Once you're on this screen, you're going to go ahead and click Import on the bottom right here, and then you're going to find your file. My file is on the desktop, so I'm going to select Desktop, and then I'm going to find that USB stick and open up those two folders. And right here is that file you're going to import. You're going to select it and click Open. For me, I'm going to hit Cancel since I already imported it. And then once you have it imported, it's going to show up like this right here, the little Hurricane. You can select that and click OK. I'm going to hit Cancel on that because I already have mine set up. Once you have that set up, you should have all of these little options in the console window over here. So click on Console and make sure you have all these. If you do, you'll then attach your laser. You'll click this drop down, click COM3, click this drop down and click Hurricane. And then once you have both of those selected, the laser should find itself when you plug it in with a USB, and it should say OK. If your lid is open, it'll say check door, but if your lid's closed, it'll just say the word OK. I'll show you that in the instructions here really quick. Like I said, import, choose that file, make sure those console options are there, and then you can connect your USB and then select COM3, choose your laser, and then it should say OK. After that, you have some basic settings that you can adjust for images here. I recommend you go through this. I'm going to save you some time. We're going to skip over these. You can set up those settings just by following this guide here. And then I'm going to show you a specific setting we're going to need for camera calibration in just a second. So once you go ahead and follow that guide there to make sure you have your settings set correctly, you're going to open up your camera calibration. But before you do that, I want you to check a specific setting here. You're going to go to Edit and choose Settings. And then you're going to make sure this one, this millimeters per inch, is selected under Better for Diode. This is the measurements they're going off of. So make sure you have that selected for sure for your camera calibration. Then go ahead and click OK. That'll update your settings. We can now do camera calibration. To do that, you'll click on Laser Tools here, click Calibrate Camera Lens, and then you'll see an option right here for the USB camera. You can then select Standard Lens and choose None for the camera calibration, and then you can go ahead and hit Next. Once you hit Next, you will need this little camera calibration card that I showed you guys at the start of the video. You'll put that in the center, you'll click Capture, and you'll try to get a score of less than 0.3 or the best score of less than 1.0. So just keep that in mind. You want to get that good of a score every time you hit Capture here. But you want to make sure you uncheck the honeycomb option here when you're doing this. So go ahead and uncheck that, hit Capture, and then on the next screen, it's going to show you to move the card, I think down first, and then to the left, and then to the right. You're going to do this 9 times and follow where the card is and capture it each time. After you capture that each time, we then have to do the next calibration. Once you get a good enough score with this, you'll just click Finish at the end of this step here. So go ahead and do that. That does take some time. I'm not going to waste your guys' time here, but you'll just click capture, click next, move the card to where it wants it to be, click capture again, and click next. So once you're done with that, you then have to go back up to Laser Tools and then click Calibrate Camera Alignment here. And then you're going to choose this camera option right here, and you're going to have a different test grid that it's going to print off. Once you select that, you're going to click USB camera, and it's not going to look like this here. This is where you're going to have to insert a sheet of paper. I'll go ahead and insert my test engraving here now. And just like in the AtomStack Studio software, we're going to basically do a test grid just like this in the software. Once you have a blank piece of paper in there, imagine this is blank right now, you'll click next, and it's going to tell you it's going to print that grid off like this. You'll then have to change your actual speed and settings here. What I recommend doing for paper, I think I used 5 power on both the line and the engraving. And then you can hit frame here, but you need to change the speed settings. So this is where that setting that I told you about that you need to change is for. If you don't change that setting earlier under edit and settings, this will only go up to 500. If yours is only going up to 500, change that to millimeters per minute, and then you can go up to 6,000. I believe you need to change both of these at 6,000. I would have to check again. I can't remember the settings for those. It's in the instructions here though. So if you go back to the instructions, it will tell you that speed setting for that. Yeah, 6,000, 6,000. They say 15 power, but I'm using a regular paper. If you use those cardboard squares, you'll use 15 power. And then you want to set the scale to 150. I think I actually set mine lower because it was I'm using the regular paper, so I used it a little bit lower. I think I set mine to like a 96. Yeah, I set mine to 96. If you can go bigger with those cardboard squares, you'll probably get a better image. But I went a little bit lower with the scale. That's just the size that this prints off on the piece of paper. Then you'll click on frame. It'll do that squared frame around the piece of paper again. And then you'll close your lid, hit start. It'll engrave that piece of paper. And then on the next screen, when it shows you the piece of paper, it'll have you choose a little arrow to click in each of these little squares. I won't be able to show you that because I already calibrated my camera. But you'll click a crosshair here, 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 and here, and you can zoom in, and it'll make a perfect square or rectangle depending on the shape of your scale here. And then once it looks good, you'll click finish, and you'll have this all calibrated and ready to print. So you've successfully set up and calibrated your unit after this step here and after that engraving. I wish I could show you guys that again, but I could only do it once there. So with that said, now that you have your camera calibrated and aligned, you can then choose camera control. You can see your camera here, and you can click update overlay, and you can now use your camera. So this is actually pretty accurate. I did do a test engraving on mine over top of this little sheet of paper. I'll try and take a photo of this sheet of paper and show you a little square piece from that last design we cut out. Now with that said, you can actually do other stuff in this software too, just like AtomStack Studio. You can do like your little square here. You can go to cuts and layers to get the same like power settings under a fill, align, and offset fill. So you have all of those different options here. You can turn your air assist on and off right there. So basically it's the same as AtomStack Studio, except this is a little bit more advanced. And you can actually use SVG files the same way, where you can just import files the same way as AtomStack Studio software. And then I find this a little bit easier to do like test grids in than the AtomStack software as well. So you can actually do test grids in here. So go down to Material Test under Laser Tools. And then you can select all your power settings. I have one saved. I called it Birch. And this is the settings that I use to create a test grid. And unfortunately, I don't know a way to actually place that on the background here. It looks like it all starts from here, but if I click preview, this is what it's going to look like after it engraves. I'm going to show you an engraving of this on 2 different materials here that I did. So I'll show you a live engraving of that here in just a second. But once you set all of your settings here, you can also change your settings here for your max power. And you can change like your text settings as well. So like the score settings on that card. And then once you're happy with it, you can go ahead and hit start. But I recommend hitting frame first. Right now, I have it set up to frame in the center of the machine. So it will move from the top left to the center. It'll frame where it's going to engrave at. Just move your wood to that area. Make sure you autofocus on your wood first so you have the right focus height like I showed you at the beginning of the video. And then you'll click start. It'll then start engraving, and I'm going to show you what that looks like right now. Alright you guys, that was AtomStack Studio software versus Lightburn for the AtomStack Hurricane here. Hopefully I did a good enough job illustrating those steps to get you set up quicker versus just reading through the manual. I know I skipped a few steps there that I couldn't redo, or just the basic settings that you can follow through on the guide. But hopefully I did a good enough job without making this video too long. I also wanted to give a shout out to DV Lasers, as they helped me find that millimeters per second to millimeters per inch from flipping to CO2 to diode and Lightburn that I showed you. Without their help, I probably wouldn't have gotten the camera calibration done correctly. With all that said, let's go ahead and recover what we did with the AtomStack Studio software. I use these little cards here. You lay them out, or a piece of paper. If you use the paper, change the settings down to 1212, and then you'll do framing and engraving, and that sheet will look like this. And then you can do the little trick with the flashlight to get enough lighting in there and take a picture of it. That will calibrate your camera. And then I showed you how to use the software itself. On Lightburn, you'll start with this camera calibration, move it 9 times all the way around the unit as the software shows you. And then you'll switch to a regular piece of paper. You'll engrave this, mark all 4 points on the software until it creates that square I was telling you about. And then click capture, and you'll be good to go for that camera alignment. Early on with the AtomStack Studio, I showed you this cut of the DXF file I was telling you about, and this shows you how well the camera is aligned, and it worked really well. I also used that trace feature to make sure it fell within this within the correct parameters here, and it worked really well, and it cut out all these pieces flawlessly with very minimum flashback at all. Those were really good settings. But overall, that was pretty much it. Let me go ahead and show you guys those test engrave settings for the material test that I showed you earlier as well, like a photo of it here and here. But other than that, if you guys have any other questions for me, let me know down in the comments below, and we'll catch you guys in the next one.